She was walking along the edge of the forest, her notebook clutched tightly under one arm and a small bag of tools swinging by her side. She liked to explore alone, away from the crowded settlement, because it gave her a chance to observe things most people ignored. Birds, insects, strange plants. She found beauty in patterns where others saw only the ordinary. But today, something caught her attention that was far from ordinary. A faint, almost musical whine echoed from behind a fallen metal pod, the kind used to carry supplies from ships that visited the settlement. At first, she thought it was a small animal, maybe a deer or one of the forest's foxes. But as she moved closer, stepping carefully over roots and uneven ground, she realized it wasn't any animal she had ever seen. Peeking from behind the pod was a small dragon. It wasn't huge like the dragons she had read about in old stories, but it was still bigger than a human child. Its scales shimmered in shades of green and silver, and its eyes, wide and watery, reflected a strange intelligence. It had a long, curved snout and a pair of delicate wings that were folded tightly against its back. But what caught her attention most was the way it was holding its mouth. One of its large back teeth stuck out slightly, and the dragon winced every time it tried to bite or move its jaw. She froze for a moment, her heart racing. Most humans would have screamed, run, or called the guards. She didn't. She knelt down on the soft grass a few meters away, careful not to make sudden movements. The dragon's ears twitched, and it let out another soft whine, looking both fearful and hurt. "Hey, it's okay," she whispered. Her voice was calm, steady, filled with the kind of warmth she always used when she spoke to animals. "I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to help." The dragon tilted its head, clearly confused. It had probably never heard a human talk to it like that. Most humans ran away or tried to strike at it. But she stayed still, letting it watch her. Slowly, she opened her bag and pulled out a small mirror, a few brushes, and some herbal powders. The dragon flinched at the shiny metal, but didn't back away completely. She carefully set the items on a flat rock nearby, then sat cross-legged on the grass. "I need to see your tooth," she said gently. "I think it's hurting you." The dragon blinked, then leaned slightly forward, almost reluctantly. Its hot breath brushed her cheek, but she didn't flinch. She had studied creatures like this in books and reports, but never seen one up close. The way it watched her, with cautious intelligence, made her heart pound. She could feel the tension in its body, every muscle coiled like a spring. It was scared, yes, but it was also curious. Slowly she held up the mirror so the dragon could see itself. "See, I'm not a threat," she murmured. The dragon's gaze shifted between her face and the reflection, and for a moment it seemed to relax. A little. She took a deep breath and moved her hand toward its jaw, stopping when it flinched. "I'll be careful," she promised. "I just want to look at your tooth." For the next few minutes, she didn't do anything except talk and make small, deliberate movements. She dabbed a little herbal paste on her fingers and showed it to the dragon. The dragon sniffed the air, and a soft hiss escaped its throat, but it didn't move away. Slowly, it let her touch the side of its mouth, letting her inspect the decayed tooth without pulling back. Her stomach tightened as she realized how bad it was. The tooth was darkened, cracked, and painful looking. She knew if she didn't act soon, the infection could spread and make the dragon very sick. "Don't worry," she whispered, keeping her hand steady. "I can fix this. I promise you'll feel better." The dragon shivered, not with fear this time, but with the pain of the tooth. She could feel it through the gentle pressure of her hand, the trembling of its jaw. She reached slowly into her bag again and pulled out a soft cloth and some clean water. "I need to clean it a little," she said. She dipped the cloth in water and let the dragon smell it before carefully touching the tooth. The dragon flinched once, but didn't pull away entirely. She stroked its snout softly, talking the whole time. Almost done with this part. Just a little more. She cleaned around the tooth, removing the worst of the dirt and grime, which made the dragon hiss. Softly. She stopped immediately, letting it settle down before trying again. Minutes passed, and she could see the dragon was beginning to trust her. It blinked slowly, almost as if signaling it knew she meant no harm. Its tail twitched, and its wings flexed slightly, but it stayed put. She smiled at it, feeling a thrill of relief and excitement. She had done it. She had gotten the first sign of trust from a creature that everyone else called dangerous. "Good job," she whispered. "You're very brave." The dragon tilted its head and let out a small, almost musical sound. She laughed softly. "See? You're not just cute, you're smart too." By now, the sunlight was filtering through the forest canopy, making the dragon's scales glimmer like silver and emerald. She could feel the warmth of its body as it leaned slightly closer, letting her inspect the tooth more carefully. She could hear faint growls from other parts of the forest, animals curious or nervous about the new presence. But the dragon seemed to ignore them, focused only on her. She realized that this moment, this small connection between human and dragon, was something special. Most people would never get this close, and even fewer would have the patience to stay calm while helping a creature in pain. She felt proud, but also aware of the responsibility. This dragon was relying on her. "Okay," she said softly, pulling out a tiny brush. "I'm going to clean this a little more. I need you to stay still, all right?" The dragon's eyes met hers, large and round, and she nodded in encouragement. Slowly, gently, she began brushing around the tooth. She talked to it the whole time, explaining what she was doing, even though she knew it probably didn't understand her words. It was the tone that mattered, the calmness, the kindness. After a while, she could see the dragon relaxing slightly, its tail brushing against the ground lazily, its wings lowering. She felt her heart swell with joy. It wasn't just about fixing. A tooth it was about trust, connection, and care. She knew that once this dragon realized she was trying to help, it might even become a friend, something no one in her settlement had ever imagined. The sun was high now, and she could hear her stomach growling. She had been out here for hours, but she didn't care. The dragon needed her, and she would stay until it was okay. She reached into her bag for a small piece of dried meat and held it out to the dragon. At first, it sniffed and recoiled slightly, wary. But then, slowly, it took the food gently, without biting her fingers, and ate it. She smiled, feeling a warm glow inside. "See? You can trust me," she whispered. "I'm not like the others." The dragon blinked at her, and for a moment, it almost seemed like it understood Dot by the time the afternoon sun started to cast long shadows across the forest floor. She had cleaned the tooth as best as she could and applied a soothing herbal paste. The dragon was resting nearby, panting softly but no longer whining in pain. She packed up her tools carefully, giving it space, and stepped back a little. "Rest now," she said softly. "I'll be back tomorrow to check on you." The dragon looked at her, and for the first time, she saw what she could only describe as gratitude in its eyes. It lowered its head slightly and let out a soft, almost musical hum. She smiled, feeling a bond forming between them, fragile but undeniable. Dot, as she walked back toward the settlement, notebook and bag in hand, she couldn't stop thinking about what had just happened. This was the start of something new, something extraordinary. She didn't know how the dragon had come here, or what adventures lay ahead, but she knew one thing for certain. She had just met a creature that would change her life forever. And It all started with one small, decayed tooth and a little courage. The next morning, she woke up early, her mind already on the dragon. She had barely slept, thinking about its scales, the way it blinked at her, and how carefully it had let her touch its mouth. She packed her bag with more supplies than the day before: herbs, cloths, brushes, and some antiseptic solutions she had learned to make herself. She also brought a small blanket, thinking the dragon might need some comfort while she worked out as she walked toward the forest edge. She kept her steps soft, trying not to scare anything along the way. The settlement was still quiet. Most people were sleeping or busy with chores. She didn't mind. She liked mornings like this, when the world felt calm and everything seemed possible. When she reached the clearing where she had first found the dragon, she stopped for a moment. It was already there. The dragon had moved a few meters away from the fallen pod and was sitting quietly, its wings slightly raised as if to shield itself from the sun. Its eyes lit up when it saw her, and for a moment it looked almost relieved. "Hey, there," she whispered. "Did you sleep well?" The dragon tilted its head, almost like it understood, then let out a small, soft hum. She smiled and laid her bag down gently on the grass. She could feel its eyes on her, curious but cautious. She took a deep breath. "I'm going to help you today, too. Don't worry, I'll be careful." Slowly, she pulled out a small brush and some herbal paste. The dragon's tail flicked nervously, but it didn't move away. She knelt down and held out her hand, letting it sniff first. The dragon leaned forward slowly, its hot breath brushing her fingers. She smiled. "Good. That's good. You're being brave." She worked slowly, cleaning the area around the decayed tooth. Yesterday had helped build a little trust, but she knew that patience would be the key today. The dragon flinched whenever she got too close, so she paused, spoke softly, and waited until it relaxed. She could see that the infection had not spread further, which was a relief, but the tooth was still fragile. After cleaning, she applied a special paste she had prepared. It smelled earthy, like the herbs she had used, and the dragon sniffed at it suspiciously. "It'll help," she said. "I promise it won't hurt." She smeared the paste gently over the tooth, trying to cover every part that needed protection. The dragon's eyes closed briefly, a soft hiss escaping its throat, but it stayed still. While she worked, she noticed small details she hadn't seen before. Tiny scratches along its snout, probably from brushes with branches or predators. Small tears in its wings that looked painful, but were healing on their own. Its claws, sharp but not menacing when relaxed, and the way it shifted its weight on the ground as if trying to find comfort. She studied everything quietly, fascinated. After applying the paste, she stepped back slightly and watched the dragon. "All done for now," she said softly. "I need you to rest." The dragon looked at her, then gently lowered itself to the ground, wings folding neatly against its back. It seemed almost peaceful, though she could tell it was still wary. She decided to leave a little gift, a bundle of soft leaves and some dried berries she had brought from home. She placed them near the dragon's side. "For you," she whispered. "Eat when you're hungry." The dragon sniffed the gift and nudged it slightly with its nose before settling down to chew. She smiled quietly and watched from a distance, feeling a warm glow of satisfaction. Suddenly, a rustling sound came from the forest. A small group of creatures, curious about the dragon, peeked from behind trees. The dragon stiffened, ears moving back, and let out a low rumble. She immediately stepped in front of it, hands raised to show she meant no harm. "It's okay," she said. "I'll protect you." The dragon looked at her, then back at the approaching creatures, and slowly relaxed. This moment made her heart pound. She realized that the dragon was not just trusting her for the tooth. It was starting to rely on her as someone safe in a dangerous world. That thought made her feel both proud and responsible. She could not let anything happen to it. Hours passed, and she stayed with the dragon, talking softly, brushing its scales lightly, and checking its eyes and claws. She explained everything she did, as if the dragon could understand her words, even though she knew it likely understood the tone more than the meaning. "See? Everything's okay. Just a little longer, and you'll feel much better," she said. By midday, she decided it was time to try a small test. She had read that some creatures respond well to positive reinforcement. She picked up a small stick and lightly tapped the ground near the dragon, waiting to see how it would react. The dragon flinched slightly, but then leaned forward, curious. She tossed a piece of dried fruit toward it, and it gently caught it with its snout. "Good," she whispered excitedly. "You're doing amazing." The dragon tilted its head, blinking at her, as if trying to figure out why she seemed so happy. She laughed softly. "Because you're brave, that's why." She spent the afternoon observing the dragon, making small adjustments to the paste and keeping it comfortable. Every few minutes, she would let it rest, give it food, or stroke its snout lightly. She noticed that it started making soft humming sounds, something like a purr, whenever she was near. That made her smile even more. It was a sign, small but meaningful, that it was starting to trust her fully. As the sun began to lower in the sky, she realized she had spent nearly the whole day with it. Her legs ached and her stomach growled, but she didn't mind. She had never felt so connected to another living being before. The dragon had allowed her into its world, its pain and its trust, and that was something extraordinary. Finally, she decided it was time to leave for the day. She packed her tools carefully, keeping everything clean and ready for the next visit. She crouched next to the dragon one last time, whispering, "I'll come back tomorrow. Rest now, okay?" The dragon blinked slowly, its large eyes reflecting the sunset. It lowered its head slightly, almost like a nod, before lying down completely. To rest, she walked back to the settlement, her mind buzzing with thoughts. She thought about how fragile and strong the dragon was at the same time. She thought about the connection they were building, one built on patience, trust, and care. And she thought about what would happen next. Would it let her continue helping it, or would it grow weary again? When she reached her small home, she immediately wrote in her notebook. She drew sketches of the dragon's teeth, its scales, the way its eyes moved when it was curious or in pain. She recorded every detail she had observed, knowing that tomorrow she would need all this information to help it even better. As she closed her notebook, she realized something amazing. This dragon, which others might have feared or tried to capture, had shown her a level of trust she had never experienced before. It had allowed a human to care for it, and in doing so, it had given her a responsibility that felt both terrifying and wonderful. She felt ready to face it, whatever challenges might come next. She lay down that night, thinking about the dragon resting under the forest canopy. She imagined it dreaming, maybe of flying or hunting, maybe of being free and strong. She hoped her presence had given it comfort and safety, and she promised herself she would continue to be there for it, because she knew one thing for certain. This was the beginning of a bond that could change both their lives forever. And it all started with trust, patience, and a simple act of care. The next morning, she woke up with a sense of excitement she could hardly contain. Today, she thought, she would try something more. Yesterday had been about trust, observation, and gentle care. Today, it was time to work a little more directly on the dragon's tooth, to see if she could help it feel less pain. She packed her bag carefully, making sure she had everything she might need: brushes, herbs, cloth, water, and a small wooden tool she had carved herself. designed to reach spots she couldn't touch with her fingers. As she walked toward the clearing, the sunlight poured through the trees, creating patterns on the forest floor. She could already hear soft rustling and faint noises in the distance, but her attention was focused on one thing: the dragon. When she arrived, she stopped for a moment, letting her eyes take in the scene. The dragon was awake, but it wasn't moving much. Its wings were slightly raised, as if it had been dreaming, and its eyes followed her every step. "Good morning," she said softly, kneeling a few meters away. She put her bag down carefully and pulled out the paste first. The dragon watched, curious but still cautious. Its tail twitched nervously, but it stayed where it was. She smiled. "We're going to make you feel much better today. I promise." She approached slowly, letting the dragon sniff her hand first. It flinched slightly, then leaned forward just enough to allow her to touch its jaw. She gently lifted its chin, careful not to hurt it, and inspected the tooth. The infection was still there, though it had not spread, and the decayed part was more visible now. She knew she needed to be extremely careful. A wrong move could make the dragon pull away or feel more pain. "Almost ready," she whispered, talking to it softly as she usually did. She dabbed some herbal paste on the small wooden tool and moved it gently toward the tooth. The dragon flinched and hissed softly, but it did not pull away. She stopped immediately, letting it calm down. "It's okay," she said. "I know it hurts, but I'll be very gentle. You can trust me." Minutes passed. She worked slowly, brushing and cleaning the tooth bit by bit. She talked the whole time, explaining each movement in a soft, calm tone. The dragon seemed to relax a little with her voice. She could feel its muscles slowly loosen, its breathing becoming steadier. She took a small brush and cleaned the areas around the tooth, making sure to remove all dirt and small particles. Every time the dragon twitched or growled, she paused, letting it regain comfort before continuing. At one point, she noticed something unexpected. The dragon's eyes, usually cautious and wary, were now watching her with curiosity. It tilted its head slightly and made a soft hum, a sound that seemed almost like approval. She smiled and whispered, "See? You're doing great. You're being so brave." As she continued, she realized that this was more than just a cleaning. It was a delicate operation, a careful dance between trust and skill. The dragon needed her to be patient, calm, and precise, and she needed the dragon to allow her access. It was a partnership in its simplest form, a silent agreement that she would not hurt it, and it would allow her to help. Hours passed, and she worked methodically. She could see the dragon beginning to lean slightly toward her, as if encouraging her to continue. She cleaned the tooth more thoroughly than yesterday, applied more paste, and even managed to gently massage the surrounding gum to reduce swelling. The dragon stayed still, occasionally humming softly, letting her know it was tolerating the treatment. She took breaks in between, giving the dragon food, water, and gentle strokes along its scales. Each time, it responded with a small hum or nuzzle, gestures of trust and acceptance. She realized that the dragon was not just allowing her to treat its tooth, it was starting to see her as a safe presence, someone it could rely on. That thought made her heart swell with a mix of pride and joy. By midday, she decided to test how much the dragon had calmed. She carefully took a small piece of dried fruit and offered it to the dragon. At first, it sniffed it cautiously, then gently took it from her hand without biting. She whispered excitedly, "See? You're learning to trust me. I'm proud of you." The dragon blinked slowly, tilting its head, and seemed almost to smile in response. She noticed small things she hadn't before, the way its tail flicked when it was nervous, the way its ears rotated toward her voice, the subtle shifts of its wings when it was comfortable or tense. Every detail told her more about how it felt, what it needed, and how to continue helping it. She realized that understanding these small cues was as important as the dental care she was giving Dot as the sun climbed higher. A sudden rustle in the bush made her look up. A few small animals had come out, curious about the dragon, but the dragon didn't react aggressively. Instead, it looked at her and seemed to wait for her response. She whispered, "It's okay. They won't hurt you." Slowly, the dragon relaxed again, showing her the trust it had built in just a few days. She returned to the tooth, brushing and applying the paste carefully. She could see the improvement already. The swelling was less, the area around the tooth cleaner, and the dragon's discomfort seemed to decrease. She smiled, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. This wasn't just about fixing a tooth. It was about connection, patience, and understanding a creature so different from herself. Hours passed, and by late afternoon, she had finished her work. She stepped back, letting the dragon rest. "All done for now," she said softly. "You did so well." The dragon blinked, lowered its head slightly, and let out a soft, melodic hum. She packed up her tools carefully, keeping everything organized for the next visit. Dot, as she prepared to leave, she felt a tug in her chest. She had grown attached to this creature already. It was wild, strange, and powerful, yet it had allowed her into its life, trusting her to help it in its most vulnerable moment. She realized that this bond was something rare, something she would have to nurture carefully. The dragon watched her leave, its eyes following her every step. She waved. Softly, "I'll be back tomorrow," she said. "Rest now. You're safe." It let out a small hum in response, and she knew it understood, at least in its own way. Walking back to the settlement, she felt a mix of exhaustion and excitement. Today had been challenging, but it had also been magical. She had not only helped relieve the dragon's pain, but had strengthened a trust that might last a lifetime. She thought about the days ahead, wondering what challenges might come next, and how she could continue helping this extraordinary creature. Back at her home, she immediately began sketching and writing down everything she had observed. The dragon's tooth, its reactions, the subtle cues of trust and fear. She documented every detail, knowing that tomorrow she would need all of this to continue her careful work. As she closed her notebook, she realized something important. This dragon, which most humans would have avoided or feared, had shown her something no one else had: the power of patience, care, and trust. She had earned a place in its life, and it had earned a place in hers. She lay down that night, thinking about the dragon resting quietly under the forest canopy. She imagined it dreaming, perhaps of flying high in the sky, hunting in the wild, or simply feeling safe for the first time. She hoped her presence had made it feel protected, and she promised herself that she would continue to be there, helping it heal, learning from it, and sharing a bond that few humans could ever imagine, because she knew one thing clearly: this was only the beginning. What had started with a simple act of care, a decayed tooth and a small herbal paste, was becoming something much larger. A connection, a friendship, a trust between a human and a creature from another world that could change both their lives forever. The morning was bright and warm when she set out toward the clearing again. She had barely eaten breakfast, her mind already focused on the dragon. Over the past few days, they had begun to understand each other in ways that surprised her. It was no longer just a creature she was helping. It had started to respond to her presence, her voice, her very gestures. And today, she thought, she wanted to see how far that trust could go. As she entered the forest, she could hear soft rustles among the trees, birds calling to each other, and the occasional hum of the dragon in the distance. She quickened her steps slightly, her heart beating with anticipation. When she reached the clearing, she froze for a moment. The dragon was already there, perched on the grass with its wings slightly extended, the sunlight making its scales shimmer like liquid. Metal Dot, it noticed her immediately and let out a soft, melodic hum. Its eyes, large and reflective, seemed to brighten at the sight of her. She smiled, her heart lifting. "Good morning," she whispered. "Ready for today?" The dragon tilted its head slightly, a motion she had come to recognize as a sign of acknowledgement and trust. She approached slowly, placing her bag on a nearby rock and kneeling down at a respectful distance. The dragon shifted its weight, but did not back away. It was watching her intently, its gaze filled with curiosity. She could feel the warmth of its body, even from a few feet away. "We're going to do a little more cleaning today," she said softly. "Then I have a surprise for you." The dragon made a soft clicking sound with its tongue, a sound she had learned over the past days might mean interest or mild excitement. She carefully opened her bag, pulling out the brushes, cloth, and herbal paste. The dragon leaned forward, slightly sniffing the air and watching every movement. She held up her hand, letting it sniff before touching her. Slowly, she reached its jaw again, brushing lightly around the tooth. This time, something different happened. The dragon seemed more relaxed. Its tail was still twitching occasionally, but it was leaning slightly into her touch. She felt a small surge of triumph. It was not just tolerating her now, it was beginning to welcome her presence. She whispered softly, "You're so brave. I know it hurts, but I'm helping you." The dragon let out a soft hum. Almost like a sigh of relief. Dot, she worked carefully, brushing away debris and applying a soothing herbal paste to the tooth. The dragon flinched slightly once, but did not pull back. She paused for a moment, letting it breathe and regain comfort. She had learned that rushing would only make the dragon nervous. Patience was the key. After a while, she decided it was time to test a small experiment. She gently picked up a small feather she had found nearby and let it hover just above the dragon's snout. The dragon blinked and twitched its nose, sniffing at the feather. She smiled. "Curious, aren't you?" she whispered. The dragon let out a soft, playful hum, and to her surprise, it nudged the feather with its nose. Gently tapping it back toward her. Dot, her heart lifted with joy. This was the first sign of playfulness she had seen. The dragon was not just tolerating her, it was engaging with her in its own way. She laughed softly. "You like this, don't you?" she said. The dragon made a small clicking sound. Tilting its head as if confirming. Dot, she continued her gentle work on the tooth, brushing and applying paste carefully. But her mind kept returning to the feather and the small interaction they had shared. She realized that the dragon was beginning to see her as more than a healer. She was a companion, a source of safety, someone who could make it feel comfortable even in moments of pain. Hours passed, and the dragon seemed to relax even more. It lay down fully, wings folded, letting her work without resistance. Occasionally, it would hum or make small sounds that she had begun to understand as contentment. She talked to it the whole time, explaining each movement, each step. "Almost done with this part," she whispered. "You're doing so well. You're very brave." At one point, the dragon shifted slightly and blew out a small burst of warm, misty air through its nose. It was harmless, but it ruffled her hair and made her laugh. Okay, she said softly. "I see you're full of surprises today." The dragon tilted its head and let out a soft hum, almost like a chuckle. After finishing the work on the tooth, she stepped back and let the dragon rest. "All done for now," she said. "You were amazing." The dragon lowered its head, breathing softly, and made a melodic hum as she took his gratitude. She packed up her tools slowly, careful not to startle it. Then she remembered the surprise. She had promised. She pulled a small wooden ball from her bag, something she had carved herself. "Look what I brought," she said softly, holding it out. The dragon's ears twitched, and its eyes widened slightly. She rolled the ball gently along the ground. The dragon watched it, then nudged it back toward her with its snout. Her heart leapt. This was the first time the dragon had played with her in such a direct way. She laughed softly, rolling the ball again. The dragon pounced gently, tapping it with a claw, then nudging it back. They continued this simple game for several minutes, and she felt a deep sense of connection forming. She realized something important as she watched it play. Trust could grow quickly when it was met with patience and kindness. The dragon had been in pain, wary of humans, and probably used to being avoided or feared. Yet here it was, playing a simple game with her, showing curiosity, engagement, and even joy. That bond was precious, and she knew she had to honor it carefully. As the sun began to lower in the sky, she knew it was time to leave. She stood up slowly, waving to the dragon. "I'll be back tomorrow," she said. "Rest now, okay? You've been amazing today." The dragon let out a soft hum and lowered its head slightly, a gesture she had come to recognize as acknowledgement. Walking back toward the settlement, she thought about the day. It was more than just care for a decayed tooth. It was about connection, trust, and understanding a creature from a world so different from hers. She felt proud, grateful, and a little amazed at what had happened. The dragon had allowed her into its life, and in doing so, it had opened her heart in a way she had never imagined. Back at home, she wrote in her notebook, documenting the tooth, the paste, the dragon's reactions, and the new signs of playfulness she had observed. She sketched its movements, the way it nudged the ball, the tilt of its head, and even the little bursts of mist it had blown through its nose. She knew these details would help her understand it better in the days to come. Lying in bed that night, she imagined the dragon resting in the clearing, the last rays of sunlight catching its shimmering scales. She pictured it dreaming, perhaps, of flying freely, of exploring the forest, or simply enjoying the safety and trust they had built together. She smiled, feeling a warmth in her chest she had never experienced before, because she knew one thing for certain. The bond between them was growing stronger every day. What had started with a decayed tooth and careful observation had blossomed into trust, play, and companionship. And she couldn't wait to see what would happen tomorrow, what new moments of connection they would share, and how this extraordinary creature would continue to change her life forever. The morning air was crisp as she walked toward the forest clearing, her bag of supplies bouncing lightly against her side. Over the past few days, her visits had become routine, but each time felt fresh and exciting. She had grown attached to the dragon, and she knew that the dragon had grown attached to her in its own way. Today, however, something felt different. She could sense it before she even saw Dot as she approached. The dragon was already there, sitting alert in the clearing. Its wings were partially spread, and its tail curled around its body. But what caught her attention was the way it moved as she drew near. It stood up and took a few careful steps toward her, keeping its eyes locked on her face. She slowed, letting it come closer at its own pace. "Good morning," she said softly, kneeling down a little distance away. The dragon tilted its head, a familiar gesture she had come to recognize. Its eyes were bright and curious, but there was also something else, a quiet alertness, as if it were ready to protect her from anything that might appear. She smiled. "I see you're feeling strong today," she whispered. She set her bag down and pulled out the brushes and herbal paste, approaching the dragon slowly. It flinched slightly at first, but stayed in place, allowing her to inspect its tooth. She could see that the swelling had reduced even more, and the tooth looked cleaner than ever. "You've been healing well," she said gently, brushing lightly around the area. "I'm proud of you." The dragon hummed softly, leaning slightly into her hand, a gesture she interpreted as trust. But as she worked, a sudden rustling sound came from the forest edge. A group of small animals had ventured too close, and the dragon immediately stiffened. Its ears rotated toward the noise, and it let out a low rumble that made her stop mid-motion. "It's okay," she whispered, speaking to both the dragon and the creatures. But the dragon's protective instincts were already taking over. It moved closer to her, positioning its body between her and the direction of the sound. She could see the tension in its muscles, the way it lowered its head slightly, ready to respond if needed. Her heart swelled with a mixture of pride and awe. This was the first clear sign of what she had suspected. The dragon was not just trusting her, it was watching over her. She could feel the weight of its presence, strong and protective, and it made her feel safe in a way she had never experienced. Before Dot, as the day continued, she worked carefully on the tooth, applying more herbal paste and gently massaging the surrounding area. The dragon remained alert, but relaxed slightly, humming softly as if signaling contentment. She realized that the trust they had built over the past few days was deepening, transforming into a bond that went beyond care. It was becoming companionship, loyalty, and even friendship. After finishing her work, she decided to give the dragon a treat. She pulled out a bundle of fresh leaves and some dried fruits she had prepared. "Here," she said softly, holding it out. The dragon sniffed the bundle, then gently took a few leaves with its snout. She smiled. "See? You deserve this," she whispered, watching it eat slowly and carefully. Dot, as she sat back, she noticed something surprising. The dragon was not just eating, it was watching her constantly, its eyes following her every movement. Whenever she moved a hand, it shifted slightly, keeping her in its line of sight. She realized that it had started to see her not just as a helper, but as someone to protect. That realization made her heart race. Dot. She spent the afternoon observing and interacting with the dragon. She brushed its scales gently, checked its claws, and spoke softly, explaining each movement. The dragon hummed in response, occasionally leaning toward her or nudging her hand with its snout. Every gesture reinforced the connection they had, built a connection that felt natural, strong, and unbreakable. Suddenly, a larger noise echoed from deeper in the forest. A branch snapped under the weight of a bigger creature approaching. The dragon immediately rose to its full height, wings spreading slightly, tail lashing. It let out a deep, low rumble that resonated through the clearing. She froze for a moment, but then she realized the dragon was not threatening her. It was warning. It was alerting her to potential danger, making sure she was aware, while ready to defend if necessary. "You've grown so strong," she whispered softly, kneeling down again. She reached out her hand, letting it rest gently on her palm. The dragon lowered its head slightly, allowing her touch even in its heightened state of alertness. She could feel its muscles tense under her fingers, the raw power beneath its calm exterior. She realized that it had chosen to trust her completely, even when it sensed potential threats. Hours passed, and the forest grew quiet again. The dragon finally lowered itself to the ground, wings folding neatly. It hummed softly, leaning toward her as if inviting her closer. She smiled and sat next to it, feeling the warmth of its body against her side. She realized that she could stay here for hours, just being near it, learning from it, and sharing quiet moments of trust and companionship. Dot, as the afternoon light began to fade, she prepared to leave. She packed her tools slowly, making sure not to startle the dragon. "I'll come back tomorrow," she said softly. "Rest now, okay? You've been amazing today." The dragon let out a soft hum, lowering its head slightly. She knew it understood. It was as if it was saying goodbye, but not really, because their bond meant they would see each other again. Walking back toward the settlement, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The dragon had not only allowed her to help it, but it had also become a guardian in its own way, watching over her, responding to her presence, and showing signs of loyalty and trust that few humans had ever witnessed. She felt proud, grateful, and a little amazed at the bond that had formed so naturally. Back at her home, she wrote in her notebook, documenting every detail of the day, the tooth, the dragon's reactions, the protective behavior, and even the small hums and gestures of acknowledgement. She sketched the movements of the dragon, noting how it shifted its weight, the tilt of its head, and the way it positioned itself between her and the forest edge. She knew these details would help her understand it better and continue building their trust. That night, as she lay in bed, she thought about the dragon resting in the clearing, alert yet calm, wings folded neatly, and eyes scanning the surroundings. She imagined it dreaming, perhaps of flying through the forest, hunting, or simply staying close to her. She felt a warmth in her chest, a mix of pride, joy, and deep affection. She realized something important. The bond they had built was growing, stronger every day. What had started with a decayed tooth and careful observation had become trust, protection, and companionship. The dragon had chosen to stay near her, not out of fear or necessity, but out of connection. It had begun to see her as someone safe, someone worthy of loyalty, and someone it could protect in return. And she knew, deep down, that this was only the beginning. Their bond would continue to grow, stronger and deeper with every day, every shared moment, every small act of care, patience, and trust. She couldn't wait to see what tomorrow would bring, how the dragon would respond to her presence, and what new ways they could communicate and understand each other, because she knew one thing for certain. The dragon was no longer just a creature. She was helping. It had become her companion, her guardian, and her friend. And that connection, formed through patience, care, and courage, was something extraordinary, something that could change both their lives forever. The sun had just started rising when she packed her bag and set out toward the clearing. Over the past days, the dragon had become more than a creature she cared for. It was her companion, her protector, and in many ways, her friend. Today, however, she felt a nervous excitement in her chest. Something told her that their bond might be tested, and that she would witness something extraordinary. As she entered the clearing, the dragon was already there. It had been waiting, standing, tall with its wings slightly open, scales glimmering in the morning light. But something was different. There was a tension in the air. The forest seemed to hold its breath. The dragon's ears twitched, and its eyes scanned the surrounding trees as if expecting something. When it saw her, it let out a low hum, almost like a greeting, but its body remained alert, ready to react to anything. "Good morning," she whispered softly, kneeling at a safe distance. "I brought your breakfast." She reached into her bag and pulled out some fresh leaves and dried fruit, placing them gently on the grass. The dragon sniffed them cautiously, then began to eat slowly, keeping one eye on the forest. She watched it carefully, her heart beating fast. There was an unspoken connection between them, a trust that went beyond words. Suddenly, a soft, almost musical sound echoed from deeper in the forest. The dragon stiffened instantly, ears pricked forward, eyes wide. She could see it wasn't frightened. It was alert, aware, and ready. She glanced toward the sound and noticed shapes moving through the trees. Her breath caught. Other dragons, larger, older, and far more majestic, were approaching. Their scales shimmered in shades of gold, silver, and deep green. They moved with grace and authority, their eyes fixed on the smaller dragon. The smaller dragon stepped protectively in front of her, tail curling around its feet. It let out a low rumble, and she instinctively took a small step back, giving it room. She could feel its muscles tense beneath her gaze, its protective instincts fully engaged. And then she understood these dragons were its family, its species. And they had come to see it. One of the larger dragons stepped forward, its gaze piercing and commanding. It studied the smaller dragon closely, then slowly turned its eyes toward her. For a moment, she felt exposed, nervous, unsure how this ancient, powerful creature would react to a human in its presence. But she stayed calm, her heart steady, knowing that the bond she had built would speak for itself. The small dragon let out a soft hum, tilting its head toward her. It was as if it was saying, "This human, she is safe. She is part of my life." She felt a surge of warmth and pride. She knelt down slightly, keeping her hands visible, showing she meant no harm. The larger dragon approached more closely, sniffing the air around her, eyes narrowing as if measuring her intentions. She remained still, breathing slowly, feeling the tension in the air. The smaller dragon nudged her lightly with its snout, a reassuring gesture that she interpreted as trust and protection. She smiled softly. "I've only tried to help," she whispered. "That's all." The larger dragon made a low, resonant hum, a sound filled with power and authority. The smaller dragon responded with its own hum, and for a moment, there was a silent conversation between them. She watched, fascinated, realizing that these sounds carried meaning she could not fully understand. But the gestures, the posture, and the interactions were clear. The smaller dragon was vouching for her, showing the others that she was a friend, not a threat. The larger dragons circled slowly, studying her, the smaller dragon, and the clearing itself. She noticed one of them lower its head slightly, almost in recognition, then another extended a wing to touch the smaller dragon gently. She could see the relief and recognition in her companion's eyes. It was being welcomed back, acknowledged by its own kind, and yet it did not leave her side. She realized something incredible. The bond she had formed with the smaller dragon was so strong that it chose to include her in its life, even in the presence of its own family. She felt a deep sense of honor and awe. This trust, built through care, patience, and gentle attention, had transcended species. She was no longer just a human observer. She was part of a connection that was rare and profound out for several minutes. The larger dragons communicated quietly with the smaller one, using hums, gestures, and movements that spoke of recognition, approval, and belonging. The smaller dragon responded, occasionally glancing at her, as if to say, "You are part of this too." She felt tears welling in her eyes, overwhelmed by the depth of this moment. Then one of the larger dragons stepped closer to her, lowering its massive head so that their eyes met. She held her gaze, staying calm, and slowly extended a hand. The dragon sniffed it cautiously, then leaned down slightly, brushing her palm with its snout. Her heart leapt. She could feel the warmth, the intelligence, and the acknowledgement of a creature far older and wiser than herself. The smaller dragon nudged her again, and she instinctively leaned closer, speaking softly. "I'll always help you," she whispered, "no matter what." The dragon hummed softly, a sound that seemed to carry approval. The larger dragons shifted slightly, giving space, their presence powerful but not threatening. Time seemed to stretch as they stayed there together. The sun rose higher, casting warm light over the clearing, illuminating scales that shimmered like jewels. She could feel the connection in every gesture, every hum, and every glance. It was a moment of recognition, trust, and unity unlike anything she had ever experienced. Finally, the smaller dragon stepped forward and gently nudged her hand with its snout. She smiled, understanding the message clearly. It was hers to care. But now it belonged to a larger world, one she could witness and be part of. The larger dragons began to retreat slowly, wings folding gracefully, but not without one last acknowledgement, a nod, a hum, and a glance that seemed to say, "You are accepted here." The smaller dragon settled beside her, tail curling around. Her feet. She knelt next to it, brushing lightly along its scales. "We did it," she whispered softly. "We're part of something extraordinary." The dragon hummed in response, leaning gently against her side. She felt the warmth, the trust, and the bond that had grown stronger every day, now confirmed by the very species it came from. They spent the rest of the day together in quiet companionship. She fed it, brushed its scales, and spoke softly, knowing that their connection had reached a new level. It was no longer just about helping or healing. It was about friendship, trust, and belonging, something that neither human nor dragon could take lightly. As the sun began to set, casting golden light over the forest, she knew this was a moment she would never forget. The dragon rested close, humming softly, while the forest itself seemed calm and alive around them. She realized that what had started with a decayed tooth and simple care had grown into a bond that would last a lifetime, and she understood the truth of it. This dragon had chosen her, included her in its life, and trusted her enough to show her a world few humans had ever seen. It was a rare and extraordinary gift, one she would honor every day. For the rest of her life. As she walked back toward the settlement that evening, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment and wonder. The world was vast, full of creatures and connections, beyond imagination, and she had found one of the rarest a bond between human and dragon, built on patience, trust, and care. She smiled to herself, knowing that their story was only just beginning, because she had learned something profound. Sometimes a small act of kindness, a touch, a word, a gentle effort could change everything. And in doing so, it could create a bond that bridged worlds, species, and hearts, forever altering the lives of both human and dragon.